My name is Anthony Bubalo. I'm the Director of the West Asia Program at the Lowy Institute for International Policy. I'm the co-author with Professor Samina Yasmeen from the University of Western Australia and Dr. Sarah Phillips from the University of Sydney of Talib or Taliban, Indonesian students in Pakistan and Yemen. The paper looks at the phenomenon of Indonesian students studying in Pakistan and Yemen. The goal of the paper is to understand whether this kind of activity poses any kind of security risk. Over the last decade, Indonesia has mounted a very successful counter-terrorism campaign. But while the terrorist threat has been reduced, it hasn't been eliminated. Ultimately, what happens with respect to the terrorist threat will be decided by what happens in Indonesia. Nevertheless, if Al-Qaeda or similar extremist groups were able to set up venues for indoctrination or for training outside of Indonesia, then this would pose a major challenge for Indonesian counter-terrorism authorities. So why have we looked at Pakistan and Yemen, and why have we focused on students? Despite international counter-terrorism efforts, Pakistan remains an important node in international terrorist networks. And Yemen is increasingly becoming an important centre for terrorism activities, both within its region and internationally. And as was shown in an earlier Lowy Institute monograph, Joining the Caravan, students have been an important vector for the introduction of Islamic and Islamist ideas into Indonesia, including extremist ones. The key findings of the report are as follows. There are about 300 Indonesian students in Pakistan and somewhere between 1,500 and 2,200 Indonesian students in Yemen. The number of Indonesian students in Pakistan has fallen in the last decade. In particular, the number of Indonesian students attending the most extreme institutions has fallen markedly. Nevertheless, efforts by Indonesian extremists to get to Pakistan continue, and the prospect that these extremists will try to use student cover is very real. In Yemen, Indonesian student numbers have grown dramatically over the last decade. Most of these students, roughly 3/4, attend mainstream institutions. Of greater concern are those Indonesian students that attend Salafi institutions. Often, these institutions are isolated or are in conflict zones in Yemen. It appears many of the Indonesian students that attend these institutions have poor levels of Arabic or have breached their visa conditions, leaving them potentially vulnerable. Salafi institutions teach a harder-line version of Islam and share some ideas with violent extremists. Some Yemeni and international extremists have been graduates or students at some of the Salafi institutions that Indonesians attend. Finally, it was not possible to make a conclusive assessment about whether Indonesian students studying in Pakistan and Yemen were being radicalized by the experience. Nevertheless, there was strong anecdotal evidence that most Indonesian students went to those institutions that reflected their existing ideological or religious views. This paper doesn't assume that all Indonesian students in Pakistan and Yemen are a security risk. The goal of the paper has been to provide a more detailed understanding of this issue and to encourage further research. We've tried to discriminate between those student connections that should be a cause for concern and those that shouldn't. We hope you find the report useful.